Yep, usually takes a few moments for it to pop on, but I hit it. I think all right, we're good to go.
The regular meeting of the Lyndale Lake Special Service District Advisory Board will now begin. Good morning. My name is Mike McLaughlin. I will be facilitating this meeting of the Lyndale Lake Special Service District Advisory Board. Before we begin, I'd like to note this meeting includes the remote participation of members as authorized in Minnesota Statute Section 13D.021 due to the declared local health pandemic. I will now call this meeting to order and call the roll so that we may verify the presence of a quorum. Advisory board members, when I call your name, please indicate if you are present. Stu Ackerberg.
Present.
Denise Aaron Buzzards.
Present.
Christina Lee.
Present.
Cole Rogers is absent. Denise, was I close on your last name? I apologize.
No.
Oh, okay.
It's okay. I'm just
All right.
like 39 years.
I will note that I'm joined by Andrew Carlson and David Bauer from Public Works. I am a consultant to Public Works, and we have also been joined today by Fatima Ampley. Did I pronounce that correctly, Fatima?
No, but that's okay.
Sorry.
Happy.
I'm not doing well this morning. I apologize. There being a quorum of advisory board members present, did I say John Megan?
No, but I'm here.
John Megan. Sorry. I skipped right over you. I apologize. John, glad you were able to join us. There being a quorum of advisory board members present, we will proceed. So our next two items we can actually take as one action item if desired by the board, and that would be the adoption of the meeting agenda for today, along with the draft minutes to the last meeting. A proposed agenda and draft minutes were distributed in the meeting packet and posted to the city's website. Are there any modifications to the proposed agenda or draft minutes?
No.
None.
If not, is there a motion to approve both the proposed agenda and draft minutes?
So approved.
Good. Is there a second?
Second.
Good. On that, I will, if there's no discussion, I will call the roll. How about I just say first names? Stu, so say yes if you approve.
Yes.
Denise?
Yes.
Christina?
Yes.
John?
Yes.
Cole Rogers is absent. Very good. Those items are approved. We do have a public comment period. I'm thinking we could table that since we've invited Fatima to participate in the first discussion item. Again, we typically have at least a period at the beginning of the agenda. If anyone from the public, these meetings are posted to the public on the city website, and someone could join us and wish to address the group. So if there's no opposition, we'll table that till the end of the agenda in case someone does join us. And we'll move on to our first discussion item, which is sidewalk planters. We're here to talk about sidewalk planters, as I think the group is aware. A local business owner, Fatima, took the initiative last year to have some planters placed in the right-of-way. We did have some conversations with Fatima at the end of the year out of some concern that the SSD team had about the placement of the planters with regard to both snow operations by the district and that they might serve as a pedestrian impediment, particularly during the winter months. So the planters were in place over the winter as they were the district assumed the responsibility. We had removed the planters as previously communicated, and the next step in the conversation is today's meeting, where we can talk about options, potential options for sidewalk planters going forward. And Fatima, I'll pause here and allow you, if you, again, I think you might know most of the people here, but if you want to introduce yourself, describe your goals, and maybe that leads into a discussion about the what the options are in terms of what could happen potentially even yet this year.
Okay, can everyone hear me okay? I have a Bluetooth situation and can you guys hear me?
Very, very faint.
Very faint?
Yeah.
Should I take these out and just go back on speakerphone?
You're okay if you just speak up, I think.
Okay, so my name is Fatima Ampey. I'm a small business owner on Lynn Lake. I own a salon and spa. We all know that the area on Lake Street, especially in my neighborhood, was pretty devastated by the social unrest. Um, I guess my main concern is to give small business owners in the area hope. Those of us that are still just open and hanging on by a thread, so to speak. I mean, even after the most recent situation with Dante Wright, that was a great deterrent for business to have National Guard and police everywhere. I had a lot of clients cancel. They were extremely nervous. I've lost 52% of my clientele base. I'm sure that from speaking to other small businesses in the area, I feel pretty passionate and committed to putting our efforts into doing some type of a curbside appeal. I don't really care if they're planters or what it may be, but two things that I learned in the process of organizing that event last year was that the community really enjoyed um, being a part of that together. They felt like they had ownership of their neighborhood again. And so, whatever you guys decide to do, I think it's important to let the community participate in that activity. It gives them power and hope and a connection that we so desperately need at this time. So, whether it be plants, whether it be whatever, we need something outside of graffiti to look at every day. I mean, it's pretty hopeless. And every time I have clients that come in from Wayzata, Edina to be serviced because I own kind of a med spa, we're doing high end services. They're just like, wow, I can't believe nothing has changed. And so, just the perception of Uptown right now is really bleak. So I don't know what we could do to restore some type of beauty, but that would be my main objective. So I'm open, and I didn't understand that I couldn't follow whatever protocol last year because I worked my hardest to include everyone from the city planner to anyone that I thought would be appropriate to ask for permission. Um, I do have a lot of citizens ask me if there's going to be a plant, like a landscape project again. So I just want you guys to keep that in mind that there are hundreds of people in the city that are we had people drive from Stillwater, from Wisconsin. We had the Edina Fire Department, those guys showed up. I mean, it was really beautiful. So if we can do something where the community can come together again to beautify the neighborhood, that would be lovely. So Michael, I hope you have some ideas.
I have a question. Um, Fatima, can you tell me where your business is located exactly?
Yes, I'm on Lynn Lake, and I'm above It's Greek to Me on the second floor.
Okay, Lynn Lake, second floor. I would totally agree with you. Currently, the situation, I think we really do need to beautify this city and make it feel safe again. So I know that it's been a tough year for businesses in general. Um, but this is the time that we have to put it all in and to rebuild the city. So as a business owner and property owner, I think, I'm willing to put out more money to make the city, beautiful and safe. The feeling of safetyness really comes through with flowers on the streets. So I would definitely, support that.
I guess I can jump in too. I sort of shared some of this before everybody got on the line. I got to know Fatima last year, was very impressed. I love her passion and she just tried to go through the front door. When it didn't work, she came through the back door to make sure that it happened, which I greatly respect and appreciate that she actually did make it happen. So we had something last year. I would certainly be supportive of figuring out how best to do this and make sure we're not causing undue exposure to the city through the logistics and ADA and things like that. And I would hope, Fatima, if you're up for it, that maybe you would agree to take a leadership role again this year if this group could sort of figure out how to make that happen. Thank you for
Yeah,
what.
I would love to. And there's a lot of small businesses in the neighborhood. I've made it my I made my best effort to know everyone in the area that's within a 2-block radius of my T-bone of that intersection. And so as far as Lagos Tacos to, let's say, Bryant Lake Bowl, Jungle Theater, I've been meeting with them. I mean, everyone is really actively wanting to participate in whatever happens, and they want something. And I have to agree with Christine. When I did the landscaping project, the beautification project, I did research on what makes people feel safe in a city, and
Yeah.
flowers have this amazing power to make people feel safe. It's
That's
something
right.
so simple.
Yeah.
Um, the beautiful part of that was also the story of the tribe donating the soil, and just people coming together to heal together. I think it's important to give community ownership. I think right now people don't feel heard, they don't feel valued, and they definitely don't feel safe in Minnesota. So I know this isn't probably a traditional way for the city to do things, but maybe it's time that we start looking at doing things differently because what we're doing isn't working as far as representation on that level of people feeling like I matter. The city, small businesses don't feel heard at this time. So something as simple as this could offer them support in a way that they haven't felt it in over a year. So
Yeah.
that's my take.
Another thing I wanted to add in is that, I think that the world is still watching us and still watching Lake Street, Lynn Lake area. There, and so this is the time for us to really try to showcase our neighborhoods, and it's going to go a long ways, I think, with this investment in the flowers. Yeah.
Christine, you're absolutely right. I had Sarah Seidner from CNN come in to get her hair done last week.
I
I
can't
think she
hear.
probably, Sarah Seidner from CNN has been coming to my salon to get her hair done and asking how she can support and if there's a story that she can share about the neighborhood. So, I mean, definitely we need to do something that shows leadership in this time and something too that would probably be a great model for other cities to follow after tragedies such as this. So I don't know, but
Mhm.
um, I totally agree with Christina that the world is watching and the world is here. The world
Yeah.
news media is here. So
I think it's great to make it charming, and even if we don't do planters, perhaps like those hanging plants from the light post would also make a
yeah,
huge impact, especially on
no,
the main intersections, to have those hanging flowers up there as well.
I spoke
That
to a
perception.
landscaper and for some reason she said that wouldn't work in our area, but
Oh,
maybe
okay.
Michael
I
knows
guess,
more
I
about
think
that.
you have to hook up water for them.
Oh,
Yeah, something.
Uh,
So the landscaper that helped with the project last year was trying to think outside of the box of how we could do it and it would be less cumbersome or not on the sidewalk. And she had that idea, Christine, and for whatever reason, she said she doesn't think it'll work in our area. I don't know
I
why.
I think that I've seen the city drive by with a truck, and there's water coming from that truck, and then they have this hose that fills the planters that way. So I don't know if that can be done. I
If
know
that
it's
could work, I
expensive.
love that idea.
Yeah, I'll jump in here. The district could absolutely do hanging baskets. We have other districts that have done them in the past. We do have a mechanism, there's hardware that can be purchased for the light poles to hang them on, and then we can have a contractor water them as needed. So please know,
Oh,
it's a cost issue. It's the driving factor would be if the advisory board wanted to spend the money to do it. We could do it subject to the availability of materials, obviously, both being plants and hardware. But we've had districts do it. We've had districts that are talking about doing it even this year. So it is possible.
And also, if there's extra funding from other sources that we don't know about, perhaps, the folks that work in the city may know if there's extra funding from the feds or state that allow us to rebuild our city because of um, the riots that happened or the damage that happened last year. So I'm wondering if there's that kind of resource out there too that can be used for this.
If I can interject, a year ago when this committee met, the general consensus was nobody wanted to see our budget grow and the assessments that went with it at all. They were like, we stick to what we know we have to do and don't spend any more money. And I felt, that was the consensus of the board. But there is a problem that we don't have a business association functioning anymore on the corner. The special service district was never supposed to be the business association. And I agree, flowers and planters would be great. And I would even propose that we should have a competition amongst businesses on this corner so that there's a buy-in from every individual property and say, who can create the most welcoming facade to the outside, because a lot of businesses, I don't even think that they ever even look at what their fronts look like because they don't pick up their trash on a daily basis. The planters that are on the corners now, I love them and I like how they're grouped, but it makes me sick that they're filled with cigarette butts. They aren't an asset to the corner if they're not being maintained. And we have a bigger problem at Lynn Lake presenting a face to the world because our business association has been cut down to about 2 or 3 people who are doing everything. And they're doing nice things because the mural projects has become the main focus of what they've been doing for the last 3 years to try to beautify the alleys, the sides of buildings, working with property owners. But it's time for every single business that has a face on the street to get out there and do it. Now, Muddy Waters used to have beautiful landscaping on the outside. John English's place did. A lot of stores took care of themselves nicely. And if we could foster that, I don't know what kind of a carrot you can put in front of businesses, but Fatima, have you worked with Morgan? Do you even, because, I was surprised that you went through special services for the initiatives that you did.
I talked to Morgan first, yes, and I meet with Morgan every Wednesday. We've been interviewing the candidates for Ward 10 for councilperson. I'm very involved, and I do know Morgan. She told me there were not funds available.
Well, and she's probably right. The funds that we have a budget and it covers things that we absolutely have to do. Lights on the Christmas trees, I think during the winter months is the most important thing that we do to make this district look like it's safe. And it's probably the most appreciated thing. And I think that us having clean streets is a big thing, and wiping out the graffiti, that's all done by special services and its budgets. The plantings that we do in front of fences, the ones that we do in the middle of the street on Lake Street, and preserving the tree infrastructure, very, very important. But I think that we should reach out and get a bigger buy-in from all the property owners, that those that are still alive or have tenants that are still alive. What can you do to make it more friendly? It shouldn't be the task of us to inflict these things on people. It would be better to get them to buy in and join us. And then it would be more eclectic. It wouldn't be so uniform. I mean, you go to a mall, everything looks the same up and down the streets. But if every store owner had 3 planters, maybe we could supply the planters themselves and let businesses be in charge of what goes into those planters and who maintains those planters. I would like to see accountability on the part of all businesses.
Well, I have to interject for a moment here and just explain to you the seriousness of how many businesses are going out of business at this time.
I'm really having a problem with your sound, Fatima.
Okay, I'm going to take it out. Give me 1 second. Hold 1 moment. Let me change something.
And John?
Yes.
Nice to see you. It's Fatima.
Okay, can you hear me now?
Fatima.
Yes.
I
Can you
can
hear
hear
me
you.
now? Okay,
Yes.
so I want to speak for a moment about this buy-in. Business owners right now are struggling very much to stay whole. So to ask them to do anything else would be, especially when they haven't felt support. So someone like myself, I'm working off of no funding. I didn't get any grants. I didn't get any because I am my only employee. I have independent contractors that all left. They all walked out after the uprising. And so now I have 2 new girls that are like out of school, that are, getting their feet wet. But the point of this is we have to, right now, it's like all of our energy is going into keeping our doors open. So to put that responsibility on the businesses right now, I just feel is really insensitive. frankly. I don't know how they could do any more than what they're doing. And places like Lagos Tacos, they spend a lot of great time and care with their exterior, but that's all out of the manager's pocket. He's paying for that. The company's not even paying for that. He has a passion for planting. He does it. Um, so I think in all fairness too, people are stretched. And that's why the landscaping initiative was great in that they came from donations and the business owners got to participate by donating food or time to plant, or I mean, a lot of people were involved and invested in it. And those planters, we had captains of each corner trying to water them and take care of them. You know, we did the best that we could, but the reality is, I think that's not really something that's realistic at this time. If you
Yeah.
understood the devastation that
Yeah.
everyone is going through right now.
I do understand it. I'm on the corner and my business is down more than 50%.
Yeah.
And I plant flowers with no budget and just, free labor, because I know that flowers and making ourselves look good is our face to the world. And like
Right.
you, my customers come from all over the place and they've been avoiding me. They've been saying
Yeah.
no to appointments. So
Yeah.
So
it is bleak for all of us.
yeah, so maybe John, again, I'm new to this today, but most of us have worked together for decades now. It sounds like we need to figure out how to strengthen the Lake Business Association. I'm hearing you. But can you maybe just go on? I mean, it's just
Yes.
background. But it sounds like there's a couple things, which is maybe some of outside of this. It sounds like we have to figure out how to bump up the business association, from what I'm hearing from you. And I apologize. We've had no involvement in that in forever. And I think maybe this transitional year, we need to figure out how to play a bigger role, to Fatima's comment and your support as well, John, that these businesses are fatigued. I can certainly tell you we have the same thing at our three buildings at Lyndale and Lake Street, that they're just maxed out. We can see if they can play, but maybe there's a way to set a new something in motion this year where we do maybe 95% and see if people want to participate this year, and then over this next year figure out how to bump up the association and have that program in place so that next year it's easier for people to opt in, but to make sure we don't miss this year, because we're looking to the tenants to do it when they maybe don't have the capacity for whatever reason to do it. Just a thought, not knowing a lot about the details.
Yeah, I agree too with that, because when we assess these property taxes, it pertains mostly to the landlords, the property owners, and many of the businesses are tenants, and so they won't be hit by that. And I don't know where the property tax assessments, property tax evaluations are at this point for Lake Street and Lyndale and all the streets that's been hit in Minneapolis, and I'm hoping that the property tax value would, have to go down, taxation go down for our properties. I don't know, but if it does, that will help offset some of the extra assessments we make for these flower implementations.
Our assessments went up, as did our insurance, because of civil strife.
So I'm positive that if we, as property owners, if we ask the assessors to reduce that taxation on our properties, they would do it. I through this whole, catastrophe, I believe that they will bring some relief to the property owners that want it. But we may have to seek it out ourselves instead of the whole thing being dropped down in percentage. But I think I do believe that it is a time when we have to do this on a more of a mass scale for Lake Street, Lyndale, because I don't see it where the business owners can handle it all themselves. So that's why I mentioned last year, I definitely did not want taxation to go up because of COVID. We had the meeting probably before the May 28th date, I think. So, but now that has happened and our city looks so dire, we have to do something to make it look safe. And that's the first thing that people will think about when they step back into Minneapolis. is safety. Yeah. And I think those flowers will make a huge impact. I really do.
So Denise, what do you think?
Well, it's so complicated because the flowers idea is great, but I know we have to go through certain things, with the type of planters and like you said, ADA and all of that. There's so much work involved. And I don't think the assessor's just going to drop our taxes. You got to go to hearings and things like that. My property value's gone up, believe it or not. Like I said, my insurance has gone way up
I
because
did.
of the civil strife.
Yeah.
Yep.
I did.
Yeah, go
I
ahead.
did do the assessment with the assessor one time,
Uh-huh.
and they dropped like almost all of the properties that we asked for in Minneapolis. So they've been so good to work with on that. So I would encourage you to do that. Though, um, I'm also waving more towards the hanging plants versus planters because I'm visualizing this look, this charming, to create this charming city look. I think those hanging planters have that look that I'm hoping to see more than the planters themselves in those the corridor and especially the intersection, closer to the intersections.
Yeah, like our banners and then our,
Yes, yes,
yeah.
yeah. I
Um,
think I'm kind of hanging. Yeah, I'm leaning
I know,
toward.
like we would do our patio. People were always thrilled with all the flowers, and I mean, we spent a lot of money with that. Um, I'll tell you this, last Saturday, I was in the neighborhood and it was so great to see lines outside of places. People wanted to get an up, down. I haven't seen that open in ages. People are eating outside. It was just so thrilling. I just wish we'd start taking down the boarded windows.
Yes, yes,
I understand, people are afraid something's going to happen, but oh my gosh, that is one of
yeah,
the worst things. And when you talk about the four corners, two of the corners aren't even occupied. Across the street were just directly across from us, that place was junk with, they finally boarded it and put a mural, but for the longest time where Melio's used to be, that is so ugly there, and I don't even know who owns that property, and it just really drags down the rest of the neighborhood.
yeah. I feel definitely safer now to take down the boards. I mean, after the trial was over, like 2 or 3 days after, I'm like, we're taking them down. I can't. The next trials that come by in August, I feel they'll be okay. I don't feel like we'll be striked again like this. So let's all take it down. Like we have to encourage all of our neighbors to do it. Yeah, feel safer now.
I mean, this neighborhood has come so far. When we opened in '82, I was chasing hookers off the corner, okay?
Mhm.
We were known for just auto parts and prostitution in our neighborhood. And I want to keep seeing us go forward and all the
Mhm.
changes
Yeah.
we've made, and not to lose them.
Yeah.
So
Oh,
it sounds like everybody feels this is a good direction to go. So how, right, am I hearing that? I mean, it's maybe how we pay for it and who ultimately maintains it, John, to your point. But it sounds like everyone's in agreement that flowers of some sort would be very positive for the community. How do we go about trying to execute that?
um, can can I ask like what costs more, the hanging planters or the planters that are on the ground? Which costs more to operate?
So I know Michael's going to provide some details here, but perhaps this is a nice lead into the next agenda item to give you some fuller context. And I think this will answer a lot of your, what we would anticipate to be your questions.
I think let's stay on this because this decision does inform the next item, but I think out of respect for Fatima, I was thinking we could hopefully come to some consensus on what the next steps are to on the sidewalk planters, and then she would be allowed to take off if you want to, Fatima, so it doesn't get bogged into the other conversation. We can do it however the board wants. That was just what I was thinking. Since we have a guest joining us, but that doesn't have to be the way we go. To the question about costs, so general rule of thumb, so not a hard and fast number, for a district size planter, and we can pull up some photos here in a minute. We do have several districts that have sidewalk planters. The closest one in proximity to Lynn Lake would be Eat Street. They have about 22 planters of different sizes, but they're, 3 feet by 3 feet, 4 feet by 4 feet, width and length, and they're about 30 to 36 inches tall.
You want me to share my screen, Michael?
Please, that'd be great, David. And so yeah, David, if you want to just go through some of those photos. So right now I'm going to describe, that's a sidewalk planter. So this is, I believe this is Central. So they have a slightly different style. Our typical pattern for most districts is we do a summer planting, which goes in, right around now in May, once the frost concerns are over. And then here's an example that David's scrolling to. In the winter, then we will do spruce tips in the same planters. So a rule of thumb, not hard and fast, is that's an Eat Street planter that I was describing. To buy the material both spring and fall, maintain it. So there's more maintenance on the summer, as you can imagine, watering, weeding, pulling out garbage and so forth on a weekly basis. Removing the summer plant material, cleaning it up, and then buying the winter plant material, and then removing that at the end of the season is approximately $1,000 per planter per year. Rule of thumb, not hard and fast. If you buy less material because they're smaller, it's not $1,000. So I'm just giving you a range. Hanging baskets, it's been been more years than I'd be comfortable just rattling off a number in terms of the cost. The biggest cost, just so everyone has an understanding, and it is completely, we can do it, so it's not a reason not to do it, just to be aware of it. The biggest cost with hanging baskets is the watering, because when you get into those really hot periods of summer, we have to have the vendor go out and water them daily, if not sometimes twice a day, if we really have a hot spell. So is it all manageable? 100%. Okay. It's just, there is a cost implication of doing that. Each Street, for example, used to do almost 200 hanging baskets a number of years ago. And it just got to the point where it was getting to be a larger price item than they were comfortable with. So they dialed that back. Is it a reason not to do it? It's not a reason not to do it. Downtown does a lot of hanging baskets, so they can look fantastic. In years past, I've gotten calls. People say, I want what the airport has, right? We've all seen those giant, beautiful hanging baskets. We wouldn't be able to do that in Lynn Lake, obviously. But if there is an interest on the part of the service district to do that, we absolutely could implement that. We would need a little bit more time to do some research on costs. And particularly this year that we're in May, we definitely need to reach out to potential suppliers and get a better sense on what plant material availability looks like.
Okay. Also, another thought too is, Fatima, do you like the hanging basket idea as a thought, so we can explore
I actually
costs?
prefer that idea. I think it's safer as far as I think it was John that mentioned the cigarette butts and stuff like that. It's safer, and I think it's really charming. It makes me think of Stillwater. It makes me think of. So I really like that idea. My question, Michael, particularly to you, is: can we still involve the community in this process? Whatever is decided, can it still be a community initiative where things are purchased? And last time we did it in that big lot behind Fujiya, is that a possibility to let people get their hands in the soil and then the city hang them or whatever, or what have you?
I think it depends on, I would say potentially. That's my fast answer. I think we would need to, we'd have to figure out what that looks like and whether, I don't know, there's some efficiency in just, we have vendors that are under contract to just saying, hey, go do this. I understand and appreciate the point and the comment you're making. I don't know that I have enough information right now that or we would be able to respond specifically one way or the other. It's possible. I think we wouldn't want volunteers hanging them, but I don't think you suggested that. But
Well, no.
helping plant them, possibly. But it also might be that we get the plant material already in a planter, so maybe there isn't something to do. You know what I'm saying? I'd have to think about it.
Okay, well, it's just something that I want you to consider when you are pulling everything together. There's a very important value, I believe, for that. It gives them people ownership of their community again. So that's just my opinion, and then you can just get back to me. But yes, I love the hanging plant idea.
Okay. And you know, I like the community participation in that too. And I was thinking that maybe that if we did the city like us take care of the hanging plants, the business owners, property owners, they themselves can put out planters, you know, through the summertime, and you know, the participation can be from our neighbors to create more of these planters, even the ground ones. So for the special service district, we can handle the hanging plant ones.
Right.
Yeah, what I like
Michael, also just a little bit on logistics of last year. I had professional landscapers working with groups of people, so there were captains on each course. So it's not like rogue where people are just, you know, there's a demonstration of what goes in how by the professional landscapers, and then people work in teams, and the landscapers make sure that we had a professional landscaper on every corner. So just so you know, so it's not some rogue like planting fest. It was pretty organized. So, so that I'm just throwing that out there so you can keep that in mind. Thank you.
Yeah, I would suggest, I think if we could figure out the hanging planters, they're probably more effective just because of so many cars parking on the street that you'll be able to see them more easily. And to Christina's comment, we really could do both, depending on how we roll this out. And again, John, maybe that's a way to make sure that we can come up with some incentive or a prize or something so that the businesses can do maybe the things on the sidewalk, then whatever those constraints are, and we could be responsible to make sure that the hanging baskets are up, and then we can just evaluate it from year to year to year until we can get some traction with the business association and get more attention, because there's a lot of storefronts that we need to resolve as well.
So thinking about hanging baskets, obviously we don't have any costs on what that would look like right now. So there's a couple ways we could do this. I'm trying to get a sense of what the board consensus would be. The group could allocate a certain dollar amount, and we can maximize however many hanging baskets we could get for that dollar amount. So that's one approach. The other approach is to say we want so many hanging baskets distributed throughout the district, and whatever the cost is, the cost is. Or you can say, you know, go put a hanging basket on every pole and send us the bill. So I'm just describing the art of the possible. I'm guessing that some of those aren't really acceptable approaches, but I want to describe just to help us help you and accomplish what the group wants to do. And I guess let me underline that is, and I think everyone probably shares this, if we don't need to meet again in order to go through more details, that just moves the process along. We can absolutely do that if that's the comfort of the board, so we don't need to just jump right in. We can go look at pricing, put a location plan together, and reconvene the board. That likely would put us out of the realm of doing anything for this summer, just realistically, because we are in the middle of meeting with all 15 boards within the city. So we wouldn't be able to meet again until we're done meeting with groups, which would be in July. So I'm just kind of laying things out just so everyone has an understanding. Anyone have a preference in how to approach it? And there are probably other ways. Those are just the ways that are coming to my mind most quickly.
Well, Mike, we have to know how big is this breadbasket, because another fear that the special service district has is if you increase the amount of budget that you've got in special services, people who disagree with that being a vital and necessary expense can come and protest and derail Lynn Lake from having a special service district. there's a couple of big property owners that have the capability to just come to the hearing and say, we protest. This is not, according to, they're not things that are absolutely necessary to maintain our infrastructure. So is it a $20,000 or is it a $40,000 gimme? We just don't know.
And I think we need to do something this year just to try and build on the momentum that Fatima has started. And John, I agree with you. So John, maybe it's now or offline or later, we should maybe talk about who those big property owners are and see if maybe offline we can try and have them buy into the concept. So at least we can get some momentum there. Again, I'm not sure who they are.
Okay.
I can guess, but I'd love to hear your thoughts on it. And just so you know, when Fatima did this last year and I heard about it, we certainly donated, and I reached out to a bunch of people, including you, John, which I think you were kind enough to support her work as well. So a lot of these property owners have already contributed a little bit last year, or at least they were made aware of this work in sort of a non-formal way.
So, John, I wanted to come to your question. So it's a little bit indirectly to the answer of I've put on my screen, and this was in the packet. Here is your amended 2021 budget. So this is the dollars you have available this year are 159,832. So there was a surplus from year-end 2020 that we carried forward to this year, which is $14,832. So in terms of staying within budget this year, if that's a goal, immediately I'd be able to say we have approximately $15,000 to go towards everything. And you could, because that's the surplus amount. Now, typically you roll that over and use that as your snowy day reserves to pay for heavy accumulation years of snow, but you could allocate it to hanging baskets if desired. You could allocate more than that or less than that because we have the ability, the flexibility to move dollars between line items. So, so this is, again, we wouldn't be, I want to make sure everybody's understanding, the service charges for this year, for 2021, are set. So there wouldn't be an increase in anything this year. If you were to go into deficit, for example, at the end of this year, we would recoup that in 2023 service charges. So there, and we would, if you, presumably you would, if you continue to do this next year, we would want to include that in your 2022 budget that we also need to talk about this morning. So, so that would increase service charges potentially for next year if you added a new component like this. So it isn't an impact this year, it's next year and the years after.
Mm-hmm.
Got it.
And then in terms of the, I mean, like I described, there's just a couple different ways. I mean, practically speaking, I would say, I think the fastest way for us to move forward is if the group were to just identify a dollar amount, and we'll go put out as many planters throughout the hanging baskets throughout the district as we can for a dollar amount. And it's just got to be a dollar amount that obviously the board is comfortable with. I think that's the fastest way, in terms of, we know, what our limits are in terms of the finances, and we'll just try to make whatever we can happen.
And can I ask Fatima, last year roughly to do what you did, and I know that there's some angst with the city because they don't comply with all their stuff, but ballpark, what was your budget last year to get that done? Or
It was about,
this year?
I can look at the overall receipts, but it was well over 2,500 for sure. I mean, I want to say, because I turned the money over to that Spark Y group, because I didn't want to be responsible. It was like all the donations went to that. So whatever was left over, I donated to that youth program, because the agreement was the kids were going to take care of the planters.
But conservatively, it was 5,000.
It was definitely 5,000.
So just for a perspective, again, Michael, I know that those give you some heartburn, but as maybe, again, a short stutter step this year, if people like that, that might be an option, is to sort of empower Fatima with the city and with the special service district to sort of maybe do Fatima 2.0 for this year while we get our act together over the summer, figure out the hanging baskets, where do they go, what's the budget? To John's point, is there some kind of other creative way to get more people to buy into it? And then really kick this off early spring of the year, just as an option. And if we have 14,000, maybe we have more than enough money already. If we allocated half of that, 7,000 would be more than enough to make sure we can at least do what was done last year and maybe some.
So I think the issue one issue that we don't have enough information on right now is it's not clear that the existing planters meet ADA standards. And we, under no circumstances, could we put out a planter that is in conflict with ADA standards. I mean, it just isn't something the city would do. So if we can reach out to the city, that would be able to inform that decision, whether it does meet ADA standards or not. But that the existing planters they're very low to the ground, and I've read some stuff that suggests that they're too low for being in the public right of way. I don't know that. I am not an ADA expert by any means, but it's right at the threshold that we would need others who can truly weigh in on that. So that's just a first and foremost concern that the risk of a trip and fall and someone hurting themselves is obviously too great, and that's just not without others within the city agreeing to it, it's not a liability that we could ever put on the city.
Yep, and I'm not suggesting that. Is that something you could check on and to see if they don't, how these could maybe be modified to comply since we already have the infrastructure? Again, I'm just thinking maybe that's a short-term gap given it's already May, and we could just make sure something's executed this year.
Go ahead. I don't know who was saying something.
I mean, I know because of the ADA situation with those planters, what about just allocating, like, say, what do you think about allocating 7,000 towards a planter, the hanging planters this year? And how many planters, hanging baskets are, can we get with that 7,000? Do you have any, guess at all on how many that would be? So instead of, going the route of planters because of the ADA compliance and it costs that much, just moving this along quickly so we have something for the summer, just go with hanging plants and allocating a certain amount to it?
I personally, just a contemporaneous statement, I think hanging baskets might be the fastest route to additional flowers in the right of way. I worry about, I'm being candid here just to assist the conversation. Stu, I too have thought about what we could do to modify the planters. I'm concerned that we'd be investing so much into a planter that really is substandard for these purposes that it would kind of be a not worthwhile effort. And just for everybody to know, when those were in their original locations, they were in a large concrete seated planter. So they weren't on the ground. So they weren't a trip hazard. So that's why where they were was okay, because they didn't have to, there wasn't an ADA issue. So and my statement about hanging baskets is based on, a guess that we'd be able to still procure enough plant material. But my guidance, if the group wants to do flowers and have the service district be involved, because I want to come to a point in just a second here, hanging baskets are likely the fastest path. And my guidance would be allocate a dollar amount that everyone would be comfortable with for the all-in planter, material, watering, and removal. And we will, we can't control all the costs, but we can certainly use that as our guide to determine how many of those hanging baskets we could buy and stay within, approximately those parameters, as long as there would be an understanding that obviously we're going to make our best professional, efforts to hit the target goal, but we may, miss it a little bit if we get a real hot spell or something and, we have to water more than we thought. So as long as we be given that understanding by the board, I think that's the fastest path. Again, assume we can get plant material.
Well, Michael, realistically, it's that whole surplus, right? To do something that might be impactful.
At least.
At least, yeah. We're talking more than that. We're probably talking 8,000 more than that. I don't know for sure, but it's at least $15,000.
I would say this is a guess. If you wanted to have a hanging basket on every low level, on every pole in the district, I mean, realistically, a fully annualized cost is probably more like $30,000 to $35,000 a year all in, and that's just a guess from what I remember Eat Street spending 15 years. So obviously there's some cost there. I'm just, is it 75,000? Probably not. Is it 15,000 to do a lot of hanging baskets? Definitely not, which is David's point.
So 30 to 35, we could definitely do something impactful.
Yeah, I mean, I think we could do 15 would be impactful. Would want to manage expectations in this call that it definitely would not be every light pole, but we could make, and I'm guessing here, try to get at least 2 hanging baskets on each corner, if you will, in the entire district. And we would have to do, I hope everyone understands, we would have to do the entire district. We wouldn't be able to just focus on the corner of Lyndale and Lake, because obviously we'd be using everybody's service charges. The other comment I wanted to make, well, 2 comments. One, if there is an interest, the city can take donations. So if there was an effort by Fatima or board members or whoever to help offset this cost to the service district, you guys could go raise funds, have people write a check to the City of Minneapolis Finance Department, send it to us, and we can deposit it, quote unquote, in the district's account, so that it wouldn't have to be all service district, and still allow some community participation in those that would want to, financially contribute to the project. So I'm just describing a way that those dollars could potentially, the project could be bigger without having to 100% at the end of the day use SSD dollars. So that's one option. The other, it doesn't have to be that way. I'm just describing the art of the possible. The other is the service district, just so everybody understands, doesn't need to be involved in this. It can be 100% for all the things we talked about, but a business association, a business owner can go pull an encroachment permit to put up hanging baskets. They're responsible for all of it. But there is another way for that to happen. So I just want people to know that this doesn't have to be a service district thing. It absolutely can be, as we've been describing. I just wanted to make sure everybody had an understanding of the art of the possible here. So again, I'm going to come back and say, again, just to help this conversation along, and I'm looking at the time because we do have some other things we need to accomplish today. I think the fastest way is set a dollar amount of service charges, and if other dollars can, donations can come to that. And to answer the question, we are not aware of any other dollars that could be used for this. Certainly not in the short term. The business association or neighborhood groups, there is a Great Street grant program that is potentially a source for sidewalk planters and things, and additional hanging basket hardware. I don't know the timing cycle on that, but that certainly is a grant opportunity within the city. It would require a nonprofit to apply for those funds, but the service district could be the implementing partner on those. So just again, to answer some of those things we were talking about before.
It's really hard to spend a lot of the money for, and think about spending more. But I feel like this is the year where we can give this back to the community. I'm kind of willing to do all of the surplus and put it into the hanging baskets.
And if that's a motion, I would.
Because it won't anger anyone this year, because those were our surpluses. 2021 is already, budgeted out. If we budget next year for these planters, we can have that discussion later. If we don't want to later, that may be okay next year not to have it. But this year, I feel like is the year that we're hurting the most as a community. So I feel like this is the year that I'm kind of willing to spend that surplus for that. And then if we have to skip next year, not do it next year, maybe that's okay. And then that gives us time to talk to the property owners that can buy into the idea of this additional cost for next year. If we could do that, they can buy into this. The people that you thought that might protest this idea, we can kind of have that time to resolve that issue this summer and budget out next year and so forth. But I feel like that is we have to kind of give something to our community that makes us feel good again.
Yeah, I think we should use a surplus towards it. And if we could get donations, that would even be better. I'm having a lot of encouragement because, well, we got through the first trial, and also more and more people are getting vaccinated. I mean, people are finally going out that haven't gone out in a year, and that whole mindset's starting to change. It's just getting more positive, and then we can see what happens next year.
My only concern is I don't think from hearing Michael and David that we need to almost double that to be effective. I mean, the 14 is great, but we need $30,000 to $35,000. So I would just try and figure out how do we need to sort of bite the bullet and say between now and 2 years from now, when it finally hits this tax statement, we need to figure out another source of funding or another something, and or maybe the way to get it done, because no offense, Michael, but obviously you guys have premiums just because of the way you operate. Maybe we have the special service district get the brackets on the stuff on the light post, and we use Fatima and other resources this year to creatively figure out how do we make these in a parking lot and try and, instead of doing them for $30,000, let's say it's $5,000 to get the brackets up, we somehow do that $25,000 for $14,000 or something. By doing it privately rather than through the bidding and the union and all the other stuff, just as a crazy outside the box thought.
Well, there's something else if you want a perspective, and that is if you look at the seasonal tree lighting budget, we have said for 10 years that $36,000 was a really key critical thing, yet it only addresses the way we look in the winter. We could make the bolder move, which is to say, let's put a $36,000 or a $30,000 line item in here for seasonal plantings, and let our budget increase. And if there's protest and people don't like it, we could always remove it. But you could, and then you could apply the $14,000 of adjustments to the first year, and then we would only be seeing a $15,000 or $16,000 budget increase the second year. So, I mean, if you want to do something that's, to David's point, meaningful, let the city have $30,000 to work with this year and include it in our budget and roll our adjustment into that figure.
I think that works too. That's a good suggestion, John.
Well,
Christina,
it would get the job done now instead of having to go out and fundraise.
Christina, I muted you, by the way, but you can unmute if you would like to participate again.
All right, we were getting a little background noise, Christina, that's all.
Oh, sorry. Was I on mute? I'm sorry.
I muted you. Sorry.
We muted you just because there was a little bit of noise. It was hard for everybody else to hear, that's all.
Oh, sure.
Christina,
Accept the motion that we do that we add 30,000 to our budget for the year and call it seasonal planting in baskets.
I would second that, John.
How's the rest of the committee?
Yeah.
Denise?
Agreed.
Yeah, I'm in favor. It's just there. I think we have so little time. We have so much research to do. Am I wrong in that thought?
Well, the city would do that for us. They'd have to come back to us if we hit a glitch.
That's exactly what we would do. We would make every effort to, if you said, and I would modify in a friendly way, John. The advisory board recommends that we spend up to $30,000 on seasonal plantings in the form of hanging baskets in 2021. And that may mean that you deficit spend this year at year end. We don't know that. Part of it, we may not deficit at end the year in a deficit depending on how much snow we get. So the good news is we haven't. It's possible even with the surplus, because you allocate for 60 inches of snow, we might thread the needle. I'm guessing here. We don't know how much snow we're going to get at the end of the year. but it may be that even with a spend of 30,000, up to 30,000 this summer, that if we don't get a lot of snow, that we might not have a straight $15,000 deficit. We might be able to hit the sweet spot and have a very small deficit, or even still end up with a small surplus. I can't guarantee any of that, of course, but I just want people to conceptually understand where we might hit on your budget. But we can go do that. The board definitely has the ability to deficit spend if you wanted to.
Or to increase the budget and increase the assessment. We've been very conservative for 10 years, trying to not let this budget grow beyond the core.
John, that is the next item, because we need to end this meeting with a 2022 budget recommendation. So we're going to talk about that in just a second. So thank you. You beat me to the punch.
So Michael, can I just ask, I'm sorry to interrupt, can you and David assure us that you can get this executed this year if we tell you to go ahead and spend 30,000?
I can't, because I don't know that we can get enough plant material. I'm just being candid. We would make every effort to, let me be clear. But I mean, you're all in the business world, right? You know, there are supply chain issues. There are, plant material. We're late in getting an order of that size in. Can we absolutely try? And just so you know, we go to the wholesalers and we get wholesale pricing. So sometimes there is some benefit to selling to the city. Stu, you described some of the downsides that we occasionally run into. So we do have the ability to do that. So we would need you to understand, we would make every effort and let me be clear. I think the approach we would take based on this conversation is we would try to get as much as we can. And if it turns out like, oh, we could only get half the hanging baskets, we only end up spending 15 because that's what we could really get. I mean, those are just dollars that would just roll over to something else in the future. So, I can guarantee you we would make our best efforts to do this. I can't guarantee you that it would be implemented.
I feel like we can find some plant material. It might not be super consistent throughout all the baskets, and it's probably whatever we can get at this point, since a lot of orders were placed back in February, March to get, spring plants. But I feel like we can get the baskets up. We can get something in them. And whether or not it's, perfect assortment and array of plants that we would prefer, it's probably not going to be that, but I think we can get something in there for sure.
We'd have them up, so you're ready to go for next year as well. I think that would be amazing.
That is true. And just to build on that, so there would be a little bit more cost this year because we have to buy the bracket hardware this year. That would not necessarily wouldn't be a cost next year unless we're adding a number of poles that have hanging baskets on them. So know that there is some sunk cost as you would anticipate in a project like this. But yes, that it would set us up for success in the future if that's what the board wants to keep doing. So there was a motion. Is there a second to allocate the 30,000 for hanging baskets? Stu is the second. Is there more discussion? I'm not trying to cut it short. We've had a very healthy conversation, but I also know that I have 13 minutes to get a 2022 budget recommendation out of the group. So any other discussion? Otherwise, I will call the roll on that item. Stu Ackerberg.
Approve.
Denise.
Approve.
Christina. I think we muted Christina again.
She nodded yes.
Approve, yes.
Very good.
Approve.
Okay, that item is approved. Thank you.
Bravo.
All right.
Thanks for pushing that issue for us.
Fatima, anything you'd like to? You don't have to say anything. I wanted to.
No, I just wanted to say thank you to the board, and in particular, I just want to give a shout out. Thank you, John, because I remember specifically your generous donation, and Stu, you as well. So thank you all for including me in the discussion. Please do not forget, Michael, please let the community be involved in the planting process if that can happen.
Yeah.
Thank you all
Fatima,
for your time.
We can connect on that, and if there's, I'd love to work with you to, coordinate this. So thank you.
Yeah, it was very organized and seamless last year. So please, I don't know who's going to reach out to me, but I don't want to take up any more of your time. Nice to meet you all.
Thank you.
Bye. Thank you. Bye-bye.
Okay. I'll note next discussion item, we included in the packet the annual report for 2022. We've been going over it in more detail. Please take a look at it. We have metrics in there in terms of how much trash we removed and so forth. So please look at that. If we had more time, I would spend more time going over it. 2021 work plan, we've been staring at it here for a while. Obviously, you have modified your work plan for the year. We'll include these costs in the line item number 4. So in addition to the planting bed maintenance, that's where you will see the cost for the hanging basket. So since it definitely fits into the landscaping. Anything else related to this year that anybody wants to talk about? I'll mention that we just did a banner inventory and looked at all the banners. We are going to be ordering some more inventory banners. So please know that any issues were taken care of last week. If you see any though, please let us know. We're emptying your trash receptacles on the same pattern. We did run around and add lanyards before during the trial to make sure that we didn't have a problem. We went through and any lids on the trash receptacles that needed the lanyards reattached to them, so they weren't as easy to sort of cause to disappear. We attached new lanyards, so we were doing a lot of stuff proactively during the trial. And working with the contractor, just because obviously, like we didn't know what was going to happen, right? Hoping for the best, planning for the worst. So know that we did that. Streetscape, landscape, everything is on plan there. We will be doing some remulching of the planting beds. It's been a few years since we've done that. It's looking a little exhausted, so we are going to do that. That's not a huge expense item for you, but we wanted to let you know that is something that will be coming. Based on the hanging basket conversation, I think we'll not replace any in-ground plants this year. We've got usually put a placeholder of a couple $1,000 for that. We'll kind of use those dollars if we need to help offset the hanging basket costs. But we did just do a big overhaul of the beds just a couple of years ago, so I feel like we should be in good shape on that front. All right, if there's nothing else on 2021, put a draft budget here. It was in the packet for 2022, so we really need to leave this meeting with a budget recommendation for 2022. So this would go to it be incorporated into the proposed operating plan for next year. It would be mailed to all the property owners in advance of the public hearing in September. And then it would go into effect, obviously, starting next year in January. So the draft budget, I made a few changes between the line items, but it is overall initially a flat in terms of the service charges. Based on our discussion of hanging baskets, John, to the point you made a couple of minutes ago, this would be the place where if you wanted to take that streetscape landscape, and I moved it down to 12 based on what we've actually been spending, that would be the place to increase it for hanging baskets.
By 30,000.
By 30 or whatever you guys decide you want to recommend, and then that would go straight to the service charges. Now, we still need to set the service charges based on what your budget is. Obviously, if there is any surplus or deficit from the end of this year, a year from now, we'd be able to amend this budget and add those dollars, either if it's surplus, or you do have the ability, and districts have done this, to reduce your scope of work to absorb a budget deficit. So I don't want to get too far ahead of myself there. So this is the draft budget. What thoughts on this? Do you guys want to add the 30,000 to the landscape item?
I thought that was the intent of the motion.
I took the motion as spending related to 2021.
Oh, well, let's assume the best. Adding a new permanent component, and let's put it in the budget and see what happens.
Okay. Thoughts, others?
I support that.
Denise?
I guess so.
Oh, yes.
I feel like we spent more time figuring out how to decorate the electrical boxes than we are with this spending.
Well, we have the opportunity over the next year to still refine this, correct, Michael? I mean, we're
Yes.
placeholder in there. So Denise, to your comment, we have this whole next year to talk about how do we do it.
And evaluate how we liked it.
Yeah.
Yes, and we will, if there are places, if the 30,000, once we add in what we forecast the maintenance and everything to be, if it doesn't get us a hanging basket on every pole, we can talk about, where they go. To David's comment, we typically place our order in January for May delivery, if not December. So if with planning for next year, we'll have much more control over plant material that goes in the plants, more potato vines versus, which honestly we've had some problem getting this year. So we can definitely spend more time thinking about, what do we want in the baskets and where do we want to fill in if we're not able to accomplish everything this year. So by all means, and like right now, we obviously don't have a map that we can show you where all this stuff is going to go, but we'd be able to talk about that as well. So we can definitely have more conversation. And are there any other thoughts on the draft 22 budget?
Well, every year, Michael, you tell us that we should always be planning for increases because nothing goes down, everything goes up. And I hope that, we stayed within budget on the seasonal tree lighting, and that includes the maintenance in the off season. I hope that 36,000 still does the job.
Yeah, I feel pretty good about the seasonal tree lighting. We did a ton of work last year that should set us up for lower in-season costs this year. So there might even be a little bit of savings there. I don't want to oversell it, but we did a lot last year that should probably save us money this year.
Okay, and last but not least, the tree inventory. I mean, we're talking as though we don't need to be thinking about replacing any trees this year. We haven't done a walkthrough to see how many might need to be replaced, and should we do a walkthrough? I was all for it. I hope we would do it before this meeting.
Yeah, I know. The park board is still planting trees up until a couple weeks from now, so some of their work might still be taking place as far as any missing trees in the boulevard area. But yeah, if you want to do a walkthrough, we could definitely schedule for one. So.
Yeah, we had some locations. There's Sherwin-Williams.
Yeah, there's a couple locations that are.
Couple of locations that the park board is going to be replanting, because we went in and pulled the electrical back a week ago on several tree locations. So I want to arm you all with government works anecdote, because you don't have a lot of those necessarily, that the park board contacts us, says these are the trees we're going to replace. We pull back the electrical that's in them for your tree lighting. They plant the tree and then we put the electrical back, and it actually works, the process. So keep that in the back of your mind. It's part of my contract that I always have to provide. My contract to consulting contract says I have to provide good anecdotes for good government. So there you guys go. That's a joke, by the way.
That is a joke. Yeah, that's a good one.
But it does work. One thing, just to potential cost implications, both your snow contract and your streetscape maintenance contract will be rebid this year for this coming winter, and for snow, in the case of snow, and streetscape maintenance for next year. So we may end up with the same contractor, we may not. The pricing may be different. So we are rebidding all of the streetscape contracts in all the districts this summer in terms of streetscape for a January start. So we're budgeting based on an inflationary increase from our existing pricing, because that's the best information we have. The actual pricing may be different. So just putting that out there so everybody has that understanding. We're budgeting based on the best information we have. With that, with the amended budget, which would be $175,000, not $145,000. Is there a motion to adopt that budget recommendation for 2022?
So moved.
And is there a second?
Seconded.
Good. Is there any additional discussion? I will call the roll on the motion to adopt the 2022 budget and work plan recommendation as amended. Stu,
Approved.
Denise,
Yes.
Christina,
Yes.
John,
Yes.
Cole Rogers is absent. That budget recommendation is adopted. That again will be incorporated into the proposed operating plan for next year and will be distributed in advance of the public hearing to all property owners within the district. So we have talked about a lot. We're at 11:29. I will note that if a couple of board administration items, I think everybody here has, we've completed their oaths of office.
Check.
And if you haven't yet, please go online if you need to complete the ethics training. It's good for 4 years, but we do need everybody to do that as well. Are there any other items the group would like to discuss before we adjourn?
Well, I would just throw out there, first of all, thank you for including me. Second, I'm not sure when the time is right, John, but to your point, or a couple points. One is that there's probably some key property owners. We should talk about that and see how do we start to plant the seeds and have them buy into the value of this beautification. Also, I'm not sure when the time is right or how to do it to figure out if we need to bump up the business association here, we should probably do so. And it sounds like Fatima might be a powerful person to help lead that role since she's also active with a number of the existing business owners. And then the last comment I have is just out of curiosity. So is it Christina or Christina?
Christina.
I'm sorry. Very nice to meet you. What is your business or buildings that you own? I've not seen you before.
My husband and I both own Lake Wine and Spirits on Lake Street. Yeah, and some properties on Lyndale.
Thank you so much.
Yeah, thank you.
And I apologize. We did not do introductions. I just we were jumped right in. So we ended there. So at least we can check it off the list of what we got done for the meeting. So I apologize for that, Stu. And Stu, welcome as our newest board member. We typically would do a little bit more of an introduction. I know many of you know each other. So thrilled to have you join the advisory board. As you can see, it's a very engaged group. And, you know, this is very typical of the conversations we've had, very earnest, very in-depth. To Denise's point, when we reviewed the designs for the utility cabinets, I think we did that over several meetings, in fact. So it's not a group that is disengaged, which candidly we appreciate, you know, in terms of helping us accomplish the work you guys recommend. So appreciate everyone's time this morning. I'm thrilled that we're only going to be 3 minutes long, and just out of respect for everyone. So if there's nothing else, we'll adjourn, but with the understanding that we will be, you know, we'll send out, email out more information and updates as we get through the logistics on the hanging baskets. And having heard all of the feedback here today, so we'll keep everybody up to date, and we will do our best to effectuate the recommendations that the group has given us today. So
thank you so much.
Thank you.
Again, thank you, everyone. We'll adjourn, and we'll be in touch. Have a great summer. Know that you can always get a hold of us.
Please. Yeah. Take care.
Thank you.
Bye.
Thank you. Bye. How do I do that? There you go.